According to a recent piece in the U.S., son Josh Duggar is being held in a prison with inhumane circumstances. Duggar, 37, is being held at FCI Seegoville in Texas as he completes his 12-and-a-half-year sentence. In a Tuesday, October 21st interview with the U.S., Son Heather Purtle, the founder of First Network, stated that as far as the conditions inside Seegoville itself and inside the units, it's going to be a typical standardization pretty much across the FBOP nationwide in that the conditions are old. I wholeheartedly concur. First Network is a non-profit organization that allows inmates to report issues with their institutions. On the website of the business, our mission is to drive transformative change within the federal prison system by advocating for the health, safety, and fair treatment of incarcerated individuals. According to Purtle, prisoners at FCI Seegoville have reported mold inside and feces all over the place, along with crumbling walls. Generally speaking, they are not allowed to use chemicals. Thus, disinfection products are not used very often. In terms of day-to-day living, it is absolutely filthy, she declared. There have been instances where inmates were actually made to pee in paper bags. Noting that Texas is experiencing extremely hot temperatures, she remarked, "It's not a very pleasant environment to be in. It feels like a sauna in the summer and freezing in the winter since, aside from the waste, the water is usually black. And some cells have no windows or ventilation." In December 2021, Duggar was convicted on one count of receiving and possessing child pornography and sentenced to 151 months in prison. The disgraced reality TV star Josh Duggar is making headlines once more. But this time it has nothing to do with his criminal charges or previous public life. Rather, it centers on the severe and allegedly cruel conditions he and other prisoners have endured while inside. Famous for his work on 19 Kids and Counting, Duggar was found guilty of child pornography charges and given a sentence of more than 12 years in federal prison. Although his legal issues have long dominated public attention, the focus has now switched to his current incarceration situation and the unsettling disclosures about prison life. Public outrage has been sparked by this story, which describes the terrible conditions of the institution where Duggar is serving his term. Numerous sources, including statements from inmates, claim that the prison has gained notoriety for its poor living circumstances. According to reports, the conditions are so bad that prisoners are being made to carry out basic bodily functions in filthy and degrading ways, such as urinating in paper bags. The dehumanization of convicts in the U.S. prison system is a problem that has been mainly disregarded up until now. But this revelation has brought ethical concerns about how detainees are treated into the light. The inhumanity of the prison's image. The Federal Correctional Institution FCI in Seegoville, Texas, where Duggar is presently spending his sentence, has long been the target of complaints about subpar living conditions. A troubling image of overcrowding, filthy living conditions, poor medical care, and abuse by guards is painted by reports from former prisoners and their relatives. The U.S. jail system as a whole has a concerning reputation for cruel circumstances. Thus, these problems are not unique to Duggar's facility. Nearly 2.3 million Americans are incarcerated at the moment, and many of them endure substandard living circumstances, abuse, and neglect, according to the American Civil Liberties Union ACLU. However, the precise allegations made about Duggar's daily existence in prison make these revelations much more concerning. Duggar and other prisoners are forced to live in dire circumstances, which has been described by a number of convicts and their relatives. The discovery that inmates are allegedly forced to defecate in paper bags, a condition that goes far beyond common prison grievances, may be the most startling. This degree of humiliation and pain is indicative of larger structural problems that many correctional facilities in the United States face. Having to use paper bags for defecation. One of the most unsettling parts of this article is the assertion that prisoners are made to feces in paper bags. Inmates are reportedly forced to make do with whatever supplies they can find because the institution has traditionally had substandard plumbing and sanitary services. This has reportedly resulted in instances when prisoners are forced to defecate in bags, which are subsequently gathered and disposed of in an unhygienic manner. Many people believe that this behavior violates fundamental human rights and dignity. Regardless of their offenses, prisoners shouldn't be made to endure situations that deprive them of their humanity. Criminal justice experts have expressed grave worries over the negative effects that these situations can have on people's physical and mental health. In addition to increasing the risk of infections and gastrointestinal problems, Using paper bags for defecation makes people who are already in a vulnerable condition feel helpless and ashamed. This fresh information regarding Duggar's present treatment in prison has sparked more concerns for the man whose acts resulted in his incarceration. How does a man who was once famous, wealthy, and loved by millions of people end himself in such a dehumanizing situation? And what does this indicate about the ability of the criminal justice system to uphold morality, particularly with regard to inmates who have been imprisoned for offenses as serious as Duggars? Effect on well-being and mental health. Within the prison system, there is rising concern about the mental health of inmates, especially those who are exposed to harsh and dehumanizing conditions. Inmates who endure cruel treatment, such as overcrowding, a lack of privacy, and poor sanitary standards, have been found to be more susceptible to anxiety, depression, and post-traumatic stress disorder (PTSD). These circumstances may affect a person's capacity to reintegrate into society after being released from jail in the long run. In Duggar's instance, the effects of these circumstances can worsen the psychological damage he is already going through because of his beliefs and time in the spotlight. In addition to causing public humiliation, Duggar's crimes involving the abuse of children have caused a rift in his family, with many of his relatives turning away from him. The additional strain of residing in such filthy and dehumanizing circumstances may cause Duggar's mental health to completely collapse. In addition to the cruel circumstances shown in facilities like FCI Segoville, experts contend that the prison system's disregard for mental health requirements only serves to feed the cycle of trauma and violence that afflicts both prisoners and the general public. Many inmates find it difficult to handle the difficulties of prison life as a result of physical and emotional abuse as well as inadequate mental health care. Demands for reform in prison. The disclosures regarding Duggar's treatment while incarcerated are a component of a broader discussion regarding the necessity of reforming the American penal system. Over the years, a number of human rights organizations, proponents of criminal justice reform, and legal professionals have emphasized the pressing need to address problems such as overcrowding, cruel circumstances, and the subpar treatment of prisoners. Paper bag forced defecation is not a unique occurrence. This technique is reportedly common in a number of American prisons, where prisoners frequently lack access to adequate bathroom facilities. Basic human and decency standards are broken by this kind of inhumane treatment, which emphasizes the necessity of structural reform in the criminal justice system. Many contend that the United States should abandon punitive policies and prioritize rehabilitation, making sure that prisoners have access to counseling, education, and assistance while incarcerated. Proponents of reform are working to improve jail conditions nationwide, including access to rehabilitation programs, mental health services, and sanitary facilities. Supporters envision a more compassionate jail system that promotes inmates' personal development and constructive transformation by tackling these systemic problems. In summary, a more comprehensive conversation on prison reform, despite how startling and unsettling they may appear, Josh Duggar's prison circumstances are a part of a far bigger issue with the American penal system. Significant moral concerns regarding how society handles its detained population are brought up by the claims of forced defecation in paper bags. Even though Duggar's offenses may have resulted in his incarceration, the type of crime a person commits shouldn't determine how they are treated. Every prisoner ought to be treated with respect and dignity, regardless of their crimes. Emphasizing Duggar's present prison experience ought to spark more extensive conversations about the necessity of prison reform in the United States. It's time for legislators, prison administrators, and the general public to acknowledge the value of humane treatment of prisoners and to take proactive measures to enhance prison conditions. This cycle of abuse, neglect, and dehumanization can only be interrupted by reform, which will guarantee that the prison system functions as a setting for rehabilitation and reform in addition to punishment.